Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. We've got a special guest and a friend of our shows in Rob McEwen from McEwen Mining. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Rob.
Oh, happy to be on, Allan. Thank you.
When we spoke back in September, Rob, I was thinking that your copper assets were not getting much attention, or the company in general. Then the copper started to get lots of attention and improved the valuation of your company quite significantly.
Yes.
And now I think a little bit of the gold is not getting recognized. You just had some great results out this week at your Stock West.
Yes.
18.9 grams of gold over 9.4 meters, 18.7 over 3, 11.9 over 2.6. And this is near your proposed ramp system at Stock West.
Yes.
Why don't we start out there?
Okay. Well, the nice thing about this, they're shallow holes too. And they're almost immediately beside the mill. So, and they're sort of in very close to where we'll put the ramp down. So we haven't defined how large an area it is yet. We think it's over about a 100-foot strike length, but we haven't defined the volume. But it could help pay for a good portion of the ramp, and because it's right there, immediate. We have a strong drill program this year. We'll be spending about $14 million at Stock this year. We spent a little over 4 right now in the first quarter, but yeah, you'll be hearing a lot more news coming out of Stock during the balance of the year. But it's a wonderful start.
I also noticed that there was mention in one of the cross sections about the area of limited drilling. That looks quite interesting to me as well.
The properties we have in Timmins, there's a lot of areas with limited drilling, and that's one of the reasons I bought it. I mean, you're in one of the most prolific gold camps in the world, and it's been going for well over 100 years, producing hundreds of millions of ounces of gold through that whole district. You say, this is a good place to put the drill holes down. So we've always I've always emphasized drilling, and it's been a bit to the detriment of our earnings because they're all expensed, but we're starting to see it show the results now. And
I noticed in your quarterly report that you guys actually had a profit on the gold operations, but then a bunch of the money went into the exploration. So it looks like things are turning around at the mining operations, and then you're spending a lot on exploration.
Yes, yeah. I'm happy to say the mining operations, we're getting the throughput up, the mill's operating more consistently. Grade's good. Where we're sourcing the gold from Froome right now at the Fox is larger areas, better grade, and easier to mine. And so the ramp we'll put down at Stock, which will start later this year, it'll be a new mine setting, new development. So it'll be much more efficient than what was formerly at the Black Fox mine, which is just punching little holes all over the place. Here you have more consistency of what's going to the mill.
So, and that makes you guys pretty leveraged to the price of gold moving up.
It could. That's very, yeah. I mean, all the junior space and miners, and particularly if they're high cost and the price of gold's starting to run, the margins expand very quickly, and you can get some exciting runs in stocks. Very exciting.
What's your feeling on gold these days, Rob? I'm thinking that the US dollar could be facing some headwinds that could put some life into gold and maybe get us closer to that $2,500 number.
Alan, that's a question. You know the answer, what I'm going to say. It's, I'm a big believer the price of gold is going higher. Governments around the world have been irresponsible, printing enormous amounts of money, incurring huge amounts of debt. And history is full of stories of when governments do that, they debase our currency, they're stealing from their citizens effectively by making their money less valuable. And the path is to higher inflation. We have a pause right now, or at least everybody's trying to think we have a pause, but I don't, I feel very comfortable saying that the value of the dollar bills we have in our wallet are not going to buy as much as they bought yesterday.
Something else that I think is not quite as well known, Rob, other than that you're a big bull on gold, is it seems that there's a bit of a currency war starting to develop. And there's two elements to that that have me very excited. One is that it looks like many countries want a competitor in world trade to the US dollar. And the second part is that a lot of those same countries have been buying up a lot of gold. So it seems like they're kind of creating a competitor with a significant amount of gold backing.
It's true. There's a number of central banks have decided that they don't trust paper currency, and they're buying gold and have been buying gold in larger number of ounces. Russia, China, Brazil, India, the Saudis starting to play that. And they're just saying, well, the reserve currency of the world has been and remains the dollar, but there seems to be a lot of dollars being printed today, and the economy is not growing as fast as the number of dollars that are being printed. So that's usually a telltale sign that that dollar is not going to be worth as much as it was before. So let's get back to something that's very traditional and buy some gold with the dollars we own, with the euros we own, with whatever other currency that we've been holding in our central banks as foreign reserves. I remember seeing some pictures, and they were really quite striking. During World War I, the Allies were shipping their gold to America, and there was one picture of 57 horse-drawn carts leaving the port of New York, going to the Federal Reserve vaults in New York City. And they were just filled with gold coming from all of the nations and the Allied nations. And they're taking the precaution that if Germany came in and took over their country, one of the first things they do is take all the gold. So they shipped it to America for safekeeping. And a similar act happened in World War II, where the Allies shipped their gold. And then when America was providing food and all sorts of other supplies to Europe during the war, what were they asking for? They were asking to be paid in gold, because they weren't sure that the currencies of the land they were selling to were going to be any good at the end. And today you're seeing a similar action going on, that people say, I don't trust these paper currencies. I want gold in the vault. And to see central banks buying, that's another source of demand. And the ultimate goal, although it's still quite some time away, would be to displace the dollar as the reserve currency. You're already seeing people buying, they had to buy all their commodities in dollars up to a point, and now people are paying other currencies to buy their oil or their other products. So it's shifting. And so if a country in the past, with the dollar being the reserve currency, if you wanted to buy oil, and let's say you're France, you had to go buy dollars first to pay for the oil. Some countries are getting around that now, not having to do it. So the only country that didn't need to buy dollars was the producer of dollars. And America could do that in wild abandon. And so it was like having a blank check. You could do anything you wanted, print as much money as you wanted, and the rest of the world had to use it to buy all their commodities. So
And if I was looking at sitting on a bunch of commodities that I needed to trade, I think I would rather have gold than I would have sell that in US dollars, which I'm probably going to quickly take a loss on. Whereas if I get gold, it looks like I'm in an uptrend.
And silver, yes.
And silver.
Yeah. I was in New York City most of this week. There was an SME conference, a mining conference, and there was a coin dealer that had an exhibit at this conference, and I picked up an Australian $30 piece that was 1 kilo of silver, 49 silver, and has a koala bear on the front and Queen Elizabeth on the back, but it's a beautiful piece, big hefty piece of silver. So it looks attractive, but it also has a lot of value, and paper currency won't buy.
And another thing I think that the central bankers are really showing their cards to investors is that you're probably better off owning gold than you are US dollars. And I think that gold, in all of this turmoil that's happening with debt, inflation, banking crisis, all of these factors, I think that the average investor out there would be well positioned to own more gold and silver. And also, if they're looking to grow their money, that's for protection, to grow their money. I'm seeing a lot of opportunities out there in the mining stocks.
Yeah, well, the juniors in particular have been beat up pretty badly. And there's some stories there that are worth looking at. I think there are many because they've been so oversold. But even in the seniors, I mean, you can get a pretty good yield buying some of the seniors. And if you're expecting gold to go up, you probably have capital appreciation as well as the income. I think some of them are yielding better than 6%. So,
did you, in your career, have you ever seen a situation like that in the gold mining stocks?
oh yeah, a couple of times. And that's what it feels like. We're entering one of those periods right now where there's a big run up. You've got to be patient, and you take the opportunities like earlier this week where gold was being pushed down on the back of some of the news that everybody claimed, oh, there's going to be no more inflation, no recession. Don't worry about it. And gold dropped. Our share price dropped. I noticed we were down about 12% from last Friday. And I went, what happened here? But it's just the market saying you don't have to worry about this any longer. But that's a short-lived phenomena, I believe.
You mentioned something there about juniors, and you've recently been rebuilding or rebranding and getting involved with a company that was called Satori and is now called Canadian Gold Corp. And I think that kind of where they've been and where you're going is sort of a representative of the industry. The company had a really good project, and yet they were trying to convert into a weed deal. And you were able to find that undervalued gold project and put a bunch of your projects that were in your private company into that company. And now it's being relaunched as a Canadian Gold Corp. That's sort of how things have been going for the gold junior stocks. Troubles and trying to convert into a weed deal, but now the gold is starting to get attention again.
Yes, well, I don't know how far the company got in the wheat transition to the weed company, but they had changed their stock symbol to BUD, Um, and so they'd gone down that path fairly far. The Canadian Gold Corp, which was previously Satori, a fellow who I hired right out of college, Ian Ball, and he worked with McEwen Mining and with me on my other projects for quite a while. Then he went off and he was actually president of McEwen Mining for a while, then went and became the head of Abitibi Royalties and did a very good job there. And then Abitibi was taken over. So we said, well, this market is in the early stages. There's properties out there that are going for a song, and they look interesting. We bought three properties that were adjacent to large gold properties. It looked like they were where we were buying could be extensions of those structures. We had that, and then we looked at Satori and said, well, we want to take this public. So I put in about $1.5 million and ended up merging the two. And I was attracted to Satori because it had a couple of drill holes that came out in 21 and no one paid any attention to them, but like just under 24 grams over 12 meters, and another one, and inside that was 47 grams over about 6 meters. And I thought, well, that looks pretty good. And then there was another hole that was almost 10 grams over 4 meters. And I'm going, well, this property has a road to it. It was a mine. There's power to it. There's underground development. It has a permit, has some tax loss carry forwards, and it's selling very inexpensively. Let's put it together. We get a listing, and the company has $2 million in the treasury right now. We're starting a drill program to see if we can add to those high grades. So if Mother Nature's kind to us, we'll find some more of this.
Well, and Ian were kind enough to do a recent interview with us on Satori, and I advise people to check that out on the YouTube channel. And as always, Rob, I continue to do my homework on the companies that I follow. And the Satori had some news out, or now Canadian Gold Corp, that got me quite excited about what I was seeing. Just going to get to that. So there's the underground workings that spiral down, and lots of high grade gold in that area. And then what really caught my attention was this below the 2017 resource limit. There's this big area, 23.8 grams per ton of gold over 12.6 meters and 9.7 grams of gold over 4.5 meters. And to me, it looks like that system just keeps on going.
Well, in that type of setting, it's not too dissimilar to what the Red Lake mine was like for Gold Corp. So yes, that was another contributing factor, that we're in the same host rock. And they have deep roots traditionally.
Absolutely. Those kind of systems are known to go on for thousands of meters.
Mm-hmm.
If I get my statistics right, it was something like you guys at Gold Corp went down over 1,000 meters and started to hit the jewelry boxes, and that continued for hundreds of more meters and made you one of the lowest cost producers in the business and one of the best performing stocks.
All true. All true.
So it would be nice if you found another system like that, Rob. I guess that's part of the plan.
It's part of the plan, Allan. It may not come to pass, but that's the plan. And anyone in the mining business is an optimist, and so that's why we're there. But
the truth machine, the drilling, is showing you the reasons for that optimism.
You see the junior sector, it was like pushing a string for the last couple of years. It just didn't go anywhere. Even though people came out with good results, the market was totally oblivious to it, ignored it. And those are the times when you want to buy, and they're still like that. They still haven't come burst into life. They're starting to move, and some have had some good moves, but it's still early stages. So
I think that's some good advice for our audience out there, Rob. And a company that we recently talked about was Dynasty Gold, and you put a nice chunk of change into that company. What stood out to me was 1.5 meters at 246 grams in a orogenic gold system. Again, the company has a very modest valuation, just like Canadian Gold Corp, and these kind of things are being ignored.
yes, not for too much longer.
And is that sort of a bottom line philosophy of yours when it comes to investing, Rob? Buy them when nobody's paying attention and not loving them?
Try to. I mean, Great Bear was like that. I think it was trading around 70 cents, and I showed an interest. It went to $1.50, but a good piece of that for McEwen Mining and myself. And although we didn't ride it all the way to the top, it went from $1.50 to $27 when I was involved with it. And in a short period of time. And it was what I find really amazing, Allan, is the Red Lake District. There was a gold rush there in the early 20s. Then there was a gold rush due to discoveries right after the Second World War. Then there was a gold rush that we kicked off when we made our discoveries at Red Lake. And 10, 15 miles away from our Red Lake mine was Golden Bear. And it was bought out for $1.3 billion by Kinross. But you just go, these old districts hide a lot of secrets, and you come in with a different approach or a different interpretation of the geology, or it's just because they went out of business or closed because the market went down to a point they couldn't finance. So that's, I guess, one of the things I like looking at. I like distressed, so bottom of the cycle, if I can do it. It's not always done. And areas where people have mined before, or different interpretations of the geology.
You know, it's kind of surprising to me too, Rob, that we're looking at over $2,000 an ounce gold, and yet there's still a lot of these opportunities out there that are being ignored. I mean, it just is remarkable to me.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, they haven't been the flavor of the month. It's been tech, biotech, it might be real estate, all sorts of other areas. And it didn't seem there was a big risk out there. But if suddenly gold's there, you might want to buy your gold before someone outlaws it. I know in Argentina, inflation rate is high, and we got a big chunk of money that came into our copper company. And we said, well, all right, how do we protect it? I said, well, why don't we buy some gold? Just put it in a gold. The Argentinian government won't allow you to buy any large quantities of gold.
Oh, wow.
Any corporation or individual. And back in 1933, the government of America said, you can't buy any gold, and made it illegal in 34 to own it, and a jail term if you had it. $10,000 fine and 6 months in jail, I think it was.
Wow. Wow. Well, it's like they're making it outlawing buying juniors these days, Rob. Nobody's threatened to put me in jail yet.
Well, that was the interesting thing. They made it illegal to own gold. Gold went up from $20 to, they made it up to $34, the official rate. And the gold stocks just took off. I mean, Homestake in 29 had a share price that was equal to what it paid in dividends in the 30s.
Wow. 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 Well, I think we're coming into one of those kind of, long-term bull markets like we saw in 2001 to 2011. I'm seeing the same thing now. Gold started to move. Nobody cared about the mining stocks. And then when they did care, they had to chase in a dramatic fashion.
You'll see the seniors starting to report pretty good cash flow and earnings. And people go, oh, all right, we should have some of that. But these juniors are coming alive. One, they can get finance probably easier. So they'll have programs going forward. And two, they're the junior producers, the high cost ones, suddenly they get a big boost in their cash flow and on their earnings statement.
Well, and speaking of one that, kind of gives you an indication that there's pent up demand out there is Silvercrest had their news release out yesterday from their Las Chispas mine in Mexico. And they reported that I think it was 20% over the estimates was the revenue and profit. They ended the quarter with about $58 million in cash, and they paid down debt. And the stock today was up 10% at one point. So it goes to show you when you've got about $11.50 all in sustaining cost for your silver production, and silver's at 25, 26 bucks, even though the sentiment might be weak, you put out those kind of numbers and people pay attention.
They do. And when you deleverage your balance sheet, your cash is building. And that's what holds a lot of people back from investing in the sector, because they say, okay, there's debt. They're not making much money. Maybe they're losing money. They may be investing a lot in exploration, and that's coming up and chewing up building up the expenses. So it doesn't look like they're going to survive for very long. And then you have a move in the market. $5 on the silver price makes a big difference.
All goes to the bottom line, especially when you're producing at about 11.50 bucks like Silvercrest is.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and I mean, that's to me is similar to the Gold Corp story when you and Ian were running it, and you guys were a low cost producer, and that made you one of the best performing gold mining stocks.
Yes. Well, we paid a dividend monthly as well.
Right.
We started off and we held back a portion of our gold. We held back starting 10% of what we made, and then we held back up to 30% of the gold we produced and just stuck it in a vault, believing the price of gold was going higher and the tax rate was coming down, and both of those things happened.
Well, here's to you guys, you and Ian, getting another Gold Corp, this time Canadian Gold Corp, off to new name, new exploration coming up. Sounds like a lot of great stuff ahead for that company as well.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Well, Rob, you've been very kind with your time, as you always are, and I want to thank you for my audience. You bring insights to my audience that I think is very important for investors, and you have a very a logical way of thinking, and I think that's the way to invest in this business, not on emotions.
One area I'd like to emphasize, we're doing it in our copper, and we're looking to build a mine of the future, and we will address our precious metal mines. A large part of the world doesn't seem to think mining still goes on. And for those that do know mining goes on, most of them hate mining. And that had a very negative impact on the industry, but also on the future of the industry, because there's a very steep decline in the number of people going through mine engineering and geology. So I was looking at some numbers recently. Actually, I gave a speech on this topic just earlier this week in New York. But between 1970 and 2020, enrollment in geology and mining schools in America dropped by 83%. It's not quite as steep in Canada, but it is still quite large. So you look at all the youth, the passion, the innovation, the skills that are being learned today, there's very few people going into the industry. And at the other end of the scale, you have 10 to 15% of the population in the mining workforce rapidly approaching retirement. And yet, when you look at the green revolution, the energy transition, one of the items it really needs is more minerals in order to make the windmills, the EVs, the solar cells. And we can't step up our production as an industry fast enough to meet the demands that, when you start calculating the needs for metal to meet the 2040, 2050 mandates that our governments are throwing out and saying, well, we have to be all EV and we have to be all renewable energy. So you go, one, the capability of the industry is declining due to a shrinkage of the workforce, and the students aren't coming in because they, like the rest of the world, believes mining's bad rather than essential. My topic was either the future is either prosperity or extinction. And when you look at it, if we can change our ways and think about addressing the concerns that everybody has about mining, then maybe, and do serious work on rebuilding our reputation by demonstrating, acting the way we're saying we're going to act, maybe we can turn the ship a little bit. And I thought, a lot of people say, well, that's never going to happen. And I thought, well, I'll call it Uberize the industry. You think of Uber, when it came along, the taxis, the complaints about taxis where they were smelly and they were dirty and the drivers were rude, the cars were poor repair. And if you wanted to complain, you didn't know how to do it and get any recourse. Uber comes along, clean cars, they're not smelly, the drivers are nice. You can you'll find out when the car is coming, so you don't have to wait around. And they decimated the industry. So in our copper project, we've got this totally different model for what the world is going to look like in mining, at least for us, and thinking if the rest of the industry moves in that direction, will become accepted. And the prize out there is right now, PricewaterhouseCoopers estimated that I saw a number recently, over $20 trillion invested in sort of climate change, energy transition investments, ESG investments. So you go, if you could shift your business and use less water, emit less carbon, less noise, could you get part of that capital coming into our industry? Because if we don't, if we're not producing, we're going from the modern age back to the medieval age, because there's just not enough metal to. So we're on the verge of extinction as an industry, but we can change that. That was part
You
of
know, Rob, you've been an innovator in the mining business since your Gold Corp days. You had the famous Gold Corp challenge, where you put your whole data set out there and allowed sort of the brain trust of the world to work on how to unlock value in that project. And I'm really impressed with what you're doing, have talked about on our past shows, with your McEwen copper. Innovative architecture, how to use less water, and other initiatives that I think could be the model of the future for a lot of mining companies, not just in copper, but in other minerals.
Across the board. Yes. We have to create a crusade to move in that direction rather than fighting it, because right now the angry hordes are at the gates, they're hammering on the gates, and they want to eliminate us. And it's, it's like the environmentalists saying we're watching the frogs and birds and that disappear. There's species extinction, but we could be extinguishing ourselves by extinguishing the mining industry. So,
Sometimes I think it gets lost on consumers and investors is just how crucial metals are to our world. You know, we're talking right now from a couple thousand miles away because of the internet and technology that all needs copper. Some people will jump in their electric vehicle that needs a lot of copper. Their internal combustion engine needs a lot of copper. You know, everything we do in our world revolves around mining. And, you know, I live in Mexico, and someone asked me not too long ago, Rob, why do I love living in Mexico so much? And I told them that, you know, here in Zacatecas, you can drive down the highway and they actually have statues to miners. They understand how important mining is to the local economy, and I hope that the efforts you're making will make more people throughout the world put us mining guys into a higher esteem.
well, that's the hope, that we shift the public opinion, and it'll take a while, but that's what should be an objective. I mean, after all, if you want a cell phone, a windmill, an electric car, if we don't have any more copper, you're not going to have any of those.
Copper and other metals, you need all those metals to make those things happen. And another important topic that I think affects the long-term supply chain is something you mentioned that I was well aware of. I'm now 58. And when I got into the business, there wasn't many 30 years ago, there wasn't many late 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds in the business, and we were called the lost generation. And the generation before us had a small group of people to sort of hand down their knowledge.
Yes.
And, you know, I really appreciate that you're doing that for my audience that follows what I do, Rob, because you're able to bring your vast experience in this industry and help my audience understand more about this industry.
Well, I'm glad to find a sympathetic ear, and that we'll go out there and try to spread the word. I think it's an idea worth spreading, to steal a TED Talk expression.
Excellent. Well, you've been very kind with your time as always, Rob, and I always look forward to our chat. So thank you very much on behalf of myself and my audience for coming on again. And any closing comments?
Get out there and buy some gold and silver.
And copper.
And copper. Yeah, not at one point it was a monetary metal when it was in the pennies, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Not no more.
No, no,
But
we're going digital soon, and that's a worry. But
it
that's
is the
another
most
topic.
important critical metal there is.
Yeah. So have a wonderful weekend, and success investing.
Thank you very much, Rob. Have a great day. I'm going to close it off, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Allan. Cheers.
Okay. There you go, folks. McEwen Mining is doing good things on their gold side of things. They're bringing down their cost, increasing their grades, and putting money into the ground with exploration, which is something that our whole industry needs, not just in gold, silver, copper. Other minerals need to be explored for and able to replace the old mines that are being mined out, and being able to produce the metals that we need that are crucial to our lives. His McEwen Copper is a tremendous story. It's the exact kind of thing that the copper mining industry needs and consumers need in order to make those electric vehicles happen. So do your homework on McEwen Mining. Also take a look at Canadian Gold Corp. I'm really excited about what's going on there. And do your homework. Have a great day, and we will talk to you soon.